So what we're doing here, as many cultures are raising there's going to be more people at this level who need to enter into self-actualizing as a lifestyle and a way of being.
Your comment is so salient, because what is one of the most common things you hear when people part from one another? Take care, which quite literally has embodied in it, this is a dangerous world in which we live. And I have transformed that. You won't catch me saying, take care. You'll catch me saying, take a risk. It'll enhance your life.
Okay. Happy.
From what you were just saying, and I've been reading some of your stuff for a long time, but I don't think there is even an age or a life condition particular to self-actualize, because I see these kids that can sing and do amazing things, and I would consider as some form of self-actualization in that they have a talent and something that they can express. Or a young man or woman who comes from an amazing environment where the chances of success of any kind are not, and they rise through some amazing obstacles to accomplish incredible things. Oprah Winfrey being probably the most amazing example. So, no sense of either age or you mentioned the example of the doctor that went to see the kids that had everything and they were stuck. So, is that an accurate?
Well, yes and no. There's some areas. Maslow wrote that he had never met someone who had gotten to the place of self-actualizing in their life under 50. Under 50. So that's what. Yeah. So he wrote that, and that wasn't the brochure. So after Maslow, one of Maslow's students who could have led out the movement, but he didn't, was Everett Sjostrom. And Sjostrom developed a measurement of self-actualization, the POI, Personal Orientation Inventory. And the POI has been used hundreds and hundreds of times to measure self-actualization, and it's been used with young people, it's been used with college-age kids, it's been used with teenage girls in different studies. So it's been used with all kinds of things. Well, this measurement measures two main characteristics with 10 subcategories. And I don't have it in front of me right now. Do you recall? Well, the time competency is one, and inner and outer directedness are the two main categories that this measures. Assuming that the more self-actualized you are, the more you will be operating from outside of yourself and attending to the outside, but being really solid in operating out of your uniqueness and owning that and not conformity. And the second thing, time competence, that you're in the moment. You can be in the moment. You use some of the past, but you don't live there. And while you're anticipating the future and having some orientation to the future, time competence is that you're in the present, and your present is creating that direction. And then there's 10 subcategories. I'll bring that in tomorrow and read about how we can measure self-actualization. Personal Orientation Inventory. And Sjostrom developed it in 1962 with Maslow. And then it was used for hundreds of studies throughout the 70s and 80s. And it still is available, and Charles is looking to use that in some research he's doing, and maybe with our meta-coaches. So we're looking to a coaching program to do the 150 questions with someone starting a coaching program, and at the end of the coaching program to run it again to measure how self-actualizing it is. So it's measuring a number of different things. Where was I going with that? Age. Well, age. And and using that instrument, people in their 20s score very, very low on that because you usually take some life experience, because half of self-actualizing is finding out what are my talents, what are my skills. And most of us discover it by trying this out. Oh, that wasn't it. Try this out. And see what I'm good at and what brings out the best in me. And oftentimes we have to get to the place where we have a little bit of financial freedom to start trying some things to see what it is, as well as some frames for giving ourselves permission to go search for it. So that's why now some of the other people who have written after Maslow has said that we're talking probably mid-30s, 40s, where people begin to really self-actualize, that bring out their best. So while there may be a child who's a prodigy at something or another, you know, what's going to really blossom out, where can this person develop it fully? So it's not only about a peak performance, but it's about that self-actualizing. A study that's very close to that is what Howard Gardner did. Howard Gardner developed multiple intelligences, the 7 multiple intelligences. He's now added 8 to the multiple intelligence. That intelligence is not just one thing, and while one kind of intelligence is grammar, linguistic intelligence, and another is mathematical intelligence, there's also visual intelligence. There's kinesthetic intelligence. There's intrapersonal intelligence. There's interpersonal intelligence. So he's come up with 8 intelligences, and when he had the 7, he wrote a book, Creative Minds. And in the book Creative Minds, he interviewed and modeled and gave the biography of 7 geniuses of the 20th century, one genius in each of these 7 categories. And as he looked at their biography, from Einstein to Picasso to several other people, the average person took 10 years to get to the edge of the field to where they could be called an expert, having mastery. And that it took Einstein 10 years before he got to creating his first breakthrough discovery. It took him 10 more years to get to the next one. That mastery is not instantaneous, that it takes time and development as we develop fully and so the self-actualizing in that process. I quote that a lot because just like there's that get-rich-quick thing, which will undermine your financial independence and success, you'll just be a victim of every scheme that comes along. The get actualized quick is really a destructive frame. You know, I was actualized on March 17th at 5:44 in the afternoon when I had my insight. You know, it doesn't work like that. It's a process. It's an unfolding. And the wonderful thing of it, and the peak experience, is that there can be this unfolding, that unfolding, that unfolding, that unfolding, and more unfolds. And the blossoming as we just continue to develop more fully.
I wonder if you could give us an example of some people that you consider self-actualized that are living today.
Examples of people who are self-actualizing that are living today. Over 50. Okay.
And I think it goes to the gentleman's question back there about, even, children who might be playing, or somebody might be an adult and they're prolific, let's say a Mozart maybe, A question I have is, I want to be happy, in my fullness,
Yeah.
I mean, so I not only want to just be really good at something and be able to get lost, forgetful, and all this kind of stuff, but if I'm, like, let's say, a wonderful musician, actualized in it, but every other area of my life is a wreck.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
so I'm just saying you can see somebody and go, oh, well, there it is.
Yeah.
This is a person.
So this brings up really a good question as we go searching to model good self-actualizing people that are contemporaries. Because one of the questions is, are they self-actualizing holistically or just in one unique area? Because the price they pay for that may not be very healthy psychologically. Okay. Okay. So let me.
Yeah, I was going to comment something similar to him as well. Like a lot of these people that are successful in something, you don't know what the rest of their life is
Right.
like. They may be a wreck in every other area.
So if our definition from Rogers is human, fully functioning, and this phrase, fully human, fully alive. So it speaks about being holistic. And it was one of the big themes of Maslow, being holistic, instead of dichotomizing this part of my life, that part of my life. Because one of the problems is that you could become very good in business, but can't get along with anybody. And so that would not fit the definition of self-actualizing. Okay, Kat?
Well, two people maybe. Paul Newman, the actor who's also gone on to do a number of very good community type of things, has talked many times about the satisfaction that he reached and how we can all reach it. And maybe how about Oprah? I don't know, is she 50 yet?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, she really has
Gotta be
done
50.
so much, and she's really extended to other people to discover what
Right.
it is that makes you feel as though you're living to a higher potential.
Yeah.
You know, so I would suggest.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So this is where the POI becomes a valuable instrument that I don't know if Oprah would take it, but taking an instrument like that to look at those different dimensions that have been worked out over the years of measuring self-actualization, and then looking at some contemporary people. I think Oprah would be somebody I'm going to be looking into as a biography for that. I've been reading Lance Armstrong because watching his life and how he's living for something bigger. He always has, bigger than the bike. That's why his first book was "It's Not About the Bike." The second book, "Make Every Second Count," and then a couple other biographies about him and how he was such a team player. And of course he said it's really about his belief in the cancer research and all the millions he's devoted to that. So I've been reading after him. I've been reading after Tiger Woods. So I've read a couple of his biographies and watched him, and it's really interesting some of the things he says about that. Of course, he was trained by his father, and Tiger is said to be able to walk through a crowd of 300 or 400 people all screaming and hollering and wanting his attention, and just walk right through them with just being in that genius state and not to be interrupted. And I wondered about that, so reading his biography, when he was 4 years old, his dad would put him up golfing, and as he was doing that, his dad would give him the practice of staying focused in spite of interruption. So his dad would be going, "No, don't. 4-year-olds. Learning to focus. And Tiger says that when he goes to play, he always shows up 2 or 3 days early. He walks through the thing, then he plays through the thing, and he says, "I play against the architect. My competitor is not anybody on the field. My competitor is the architect." So there's one of his frames. And so he goes to, and he plays the thing to see what tricks the architect has built into the architecture of the golf course. So he's got his frames and his beliefs about the different things. So I've been following him. I was really impressed with Rudy Giuliani, the mayor of New York, and the immense change that he made in New York from murder city #1 in America to 104th in 10 years, and the difference he made, and his leadership skills and his ability to do that, and watching that self-actualization, and especially when he went through cancer and the other things. And so I'm following up a number of people, and if you got some suggestions of people you think are really exemplify some self-actualization, I'd love to hear, because that's one of my projects in the next couple of years, to read, to interview, to see if I can interview some of these people to see who's contemporary in that as models. But even naming some of these big, well-known people who've done wonderful things, it seems to me we don't want to miss the average person who is actualizing.
I just wrote that down.
Yeah, who's actually.
I know, I was thinking as you were talking, like a Cuban family that, all of them got here, and I mean, to me, they're a remarkable family.
Yeah.
I mean, just every one of them have gone to other countries to
Yeah.
volunteer, to do other things for other people, how they live their lives. They all just seem so happy and so related. Um, in a real simple way, simple pleasures, there's nothing ostentatious about them. So they're non-celebrity. No one could ever know about them. But it would seem that they would fit every definition that you're talking about.
Yeah. So this is the problem, because most of us do tend to go to that celebrity, you know, who do we know? And yet self-actualization is for everybody.
Everybody's on the corner.
And it's about really living fully your life. There was...
You know, as you thought about that, you brought up these names. If I may be so bold, but everybody in this room who is in the process of self-actualization, stand up. Everybody in the room who is in the process of self-actualization. All right. Yeah, well, there we go. Are we not all?
Hey, let's start
Give him my hand.
We got a few more minutes, so Charles.
I jotted down, I just wanted, I jotted down those 10 things, the other 10 subcategories. You were talking about POI, kind of what it measures, they're like in 5 groupings.
Okay.
If you want real quick.
Okay, so call those off and I'll repeat them.
I mean, the first one was value. And I had to do people that are self-actualizing agree with, this is kind of a wheel within a wheel, but do they agree with the values of people that are self-actualizing?
Yeah, the B
allowed
values.
to self-actualize, right? The other one is that existentialism in terms of are values fixed and set, or are they relative? So how people view values.
Okay.
And the other one to deal with feelings, in my relationships, do I consider my own feelings and needs, or just disregard those? And am I spontaneous in just ability to, hey, this is how I feel, this is who I am. The other one was self-reflection, that has to do with their self-regard of themselves, what we've been talking about, and self-acceptance of themselves. That's another category. The other one is synergistic. Is man destructive or constructive? Do you see man as good or bad? So in that area. And also synergy in terms of our opposites. You know, can you synergize things, or opposites antagonistic against each other? How do you see the world in terms of, listen, it's not either or. It can be both. It can be synthesized. And the last one was interpersonal sensitivity, and that's the ability to live with your own aggression and anger and aggression. Am I okay with that? And the last was, can I have intimate relationships, and how well can I become intimate with people? So those are the measures.
And we'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow, so wrap that up, but that's good for today.
Can you expand it? Recently there were a number of articles talking about dot-com people, very successful people in the late 40s, early 50s, mid-50s, that are going through the process of being very successful to become very significant in what they do. So many of them, okay, I know how to be successful. I got here. I just want to spend the other half of my life being significant. So there is a couple of books on that, and there is one individual that has been dedicating a foundation to help people to spend portions of their life, or whatever portion of their life is, in being significant, moving from the just building a business. So is that self-actualization, or is that, why is that transition?
Yeah, it doesn't strike me as fitting the model of self-actualization, because usually significance is at a lower level. And Erik Erikson, who mapped out the stages of human life throughout the stages, some of the later stages from 50 on is integration, when we integrate and think in terms of leaving a legacy. That those are some of the last stages of the lifespan development. So what you're talking about sounds like almost they've got the financial success, the worldly success, and they're still at that adolescent stage of looking for significance. But if that's where they are, that's where they are.
That's the thing that they need, pull things together and add that one little component. Sometimes that's what a coach will do, is just give that one clue to make that thing happen.
Sure. Well, we've covered a lot of things today. hopefully you have a sense of how to build that space to hold for you. Because the space that you hold for you really is a crucible of transformation. So it's a transformational tool. It's a change tool. How does change occur? Well, to some extent, if you can just embrace whatever is, sometimes it'll organically change. It'll just naturally, organically, self-organize to do what it's designed to do at its best. Sometimes when we hold the space of change and allow a person to witness and to accept and whatever frames that have been driving their life and to look for what's the value behind them and to ruthlessly, in an honest way, just expose maybe cognitive distortions, that'll bring about transformation and change. So the crucible is one of our neurosemantic change tools. The axis of change is another one, for those of you who know the axes of change. But this is another one, and it's a way that I can facilitate my own change and growth and development, and for me to really be supportive in a very gentle and kind way, holding a space for someone else. So what you've experienced today is just the beginning of a tool that we can use as change agents with people, with groups, and other things. So we'll play with that. Tomorrow we're going to now put it in high gear. And so tomorrow we're going to be going into the zone of self-actualization, and we'll be talking about actualizing it and getting it real and getting it into life. And those who have been just dreamers, making things happen. Because that's where the rubber meets the road, and that's where it makes a difference. So while we can have some peak experiences, and it's wonderful for us, the difference now when we create some performances, your performance as a coach, as a trainer, as a parent, as a lover, as whatever you do, that performance now can be optimized for you, and you perform those meanings that are so significant and get them out there into the world. And just imagine a group of this size doing that, and you touching lives and them touching lives, of us getting things done instead of just talking about it. And so that's where we go tomorrow as we talk about the zone of self-actualization. Day one, we talked about our meaning-making powers and how we construct meaning, and we can put meaning on a scale from 0 to 10 in terms of quality. And in your manuals, we have that scale from meaninglessness and futility and valuelessness and all the sickness of the meta-pathologies when we have no significant meaning to live by. And as we move up into just conventional meaning and average meaning and fitting in, and then moving up to when we find some really idiosyncratic, unique meanings for you. And then when we move up into finding things that are meaningful, that makes a difference, that contributes to the world, and the quality of meanings. This would be low quality. Finding meanings and being able to just embrace whatever is part of reality. And so yesterday we talked about the crucible. Being able to face whatever is and look at it and then use our meaning-making powers to put the best spin on it so that it serves us. We can capitalize on whatever is. We're going to talk a lot about capitalizing on problems and reality today, because as a meaning maker, we are at choice point and can take powers to give it any meanings we can. But to do that, we have to be able to just hold the space for ourselves and others. We've gone from creating meaning to holding a space, so that in holding the space, we can now begin working with the performance scale. Because just as we have a meaning scale and can have qualities of meaning and high-level meanings and and low-level meanings, in terms of performance, we can have a similar scale. In terms of you making things happen, in terms of you performing the meanings that inspire and excite you. In terms of you doing effective action in the world, we can have a scale of performance to see how much you can perform what you know, how much you can translate into muscle memory and into way of being in the world, so that as we increase more meaning and increase more performance, we move out of the quadrants when we're undeveloped, or when we're just a performer, or when we're just dreaming and creating things in our mind, to where we can really get to this self-actualization quadrant. And this is the zone. This is when we're really in the zone and it's all being synthesized together. And that's the theme for today. To get into the zone, to when we're just really there, integrating and synthesizing our great ideas with our performance. Or, if you're already doing good performance, but it's not all that meaningful, to make it richer, fuller, more robust, so that it's really significant, the actions that you're taking. So whether you specialize in meaning or you specialize in performance, most of us have a specialty, that now we're going to synthesize, and it's the synthesis that creates that synergy. Self-actualizing is a function of synergy. That'll be the principle we're going to operate from today. It's one of the other answers to that phone question. How does it work? It works by the integration of opposites. It works through the synthesizing of what seems to be polar opposites. And instead of mind, body, work, play, and all the other opposites, we're going to synthesize and create a synergy. To do that means to think and work systemically with mind, body, motion system. And as we work systemically, that's part of the answer too. Self-actualization works systemically. And because it works systemically, things will emerge, and in systems language, emergent properties from the system that's more than the sum of the parts. So this gives birth to new creative things that you can't explain by adding all the parts together, because it's emergence. What will emerge in you? What will emerge when you take some of your great ideas and you translate it into the way you manifest, make it real, realize it in the world? So as we think about this continuum and pulling it together, then we have this zone, and when we're weak in meaning and we're really performing well, we need to increase the meaning level. And when we have great meaning, but we're a little bit weak in translating into reality, we need to have more performance. And so that synthesis and moving in there, the very place where you're the strongest, most of us will tend to overdo it. So when we have a difficulty, problem, something's not working, we will tend to default to what we're strongest at. I need to dream more, reflect more, think more, create more meaning. But counterintuitively, actually, you need to just take some more risks, take some actions, try something, experiment, play around, fail, develop some good problems. And if you're doing things, and you're really good at, as a mover and a shaker, and making things happen, and taking risks, and going out there, and you don't spend enough time reflecting, and thinking, and creating meaning, and what are 3 other meanings I could give to that? Then when you have stress and when things aren't working, you'll tend to overdo that. Let me just work some more. I'll do it harder and faster and louder. And counterintuitively, if I just spend some time. So most people who do executive coaching, we're working with movers and shakers. They make things happen, and the last thing they want to do is to take some time out to reflect. But when they do, some magic, the synthesis, the synergy begins to occur. And people who are great reflectors and creators and dreamers, the last thing that they think about doing is jumping out because they're not quite ready. Because they need to think more, believe more, and taking the risk, and even if they know it's not going to work, let me go find out how it doesn't work. Because that'd be great information I could feed back in. And so risk-taking and safe, wise risk-taking. So now we've got some more pieces of how does self-actualizing work? Well, it works by taking some risks, jumping out there and just inventing it as you go for the meaning makers. And it's stop, reflect, think, spend some time just creating some meaning for the performers. Happy.
I was just going to say that you either end up with a lot of great ideas and broke, or rich and unhappy.
Great dreamers and broke, rich and miserable.
You know, it's funny because in the book, The Mind of the Millionaire or something, it says that the folks that ended up being self-made with $10 million net worth, but it was all congruent. They were married for 30 years. They spent all of the time not playing golf or in a yacht, but with the family. They held the same home and car for 10 years, and they were in heaven. And yet, so they were probably in that zone.
Yeah. It's that synthesis of performing your best meaning. So a very personal question for you to begin, for me to begin, to really think and spend some time with is, in the weeks to come, in the months to come, how much of the meanings, the inspiring ideas, the great dreams I have, am I manifesting by performance? And what meanings do I need to start performing? And what performances am I doing that maybe I need to add some rich meanings to so that it becomes richer in meaning, more meaningful? And so those are the questions that helps us to move into the zone if self-actualization is a function of meaning and performance. So today we go to the zone. Today we go to the area where we begin putting together. Find my charts here. And we're going to be looking at that zone that'll be the place where we'll kick up our heels and feel unleashed to really turn loose to do the things that are important for us. So as we move into that zone, I want to give a description of that zone so that we can describe it. We've got a couple patterns to do in unleashing the potentials of that zone. So in your manuals, on day 3, after all the crucible things, 65, I think, about 65, 66 in yours. Well, day 3 probably 65. So we're going to identify your zone of self-actualization and do some synergies between challenge and competencies, meaning and performance, begin to actualize, to embody it in our very behavior, to step in and out of that zone at will so that it is at our command, then turn ecstasy and these meta pleasures as our way of being, capitalizing on problems. And so that's what we're going to do in this zone. You can see in the little diagram on page 66, somewhat this diagram, but this comes from Csikszentmihalyi and his flow chart as he analyzed. He studied happiness. That's what he was studying when he was doing his doctoral thesis. He was studying happiness and exploring the structure of happiness and how people are happy. And he found that happiness is a function of challenge and competency. But it's about the same. Challenge, it's meaningful to me. It's something that challenges me, that stretches me, that moves me. I'm not quite there, because if I'm there, then there's not that stretch, there's not that effort to reach out and actualize more potential. So happiness is a function of challenge. And then competence. It's in this diagram. If you look at the diagram, the axis of challenge and the axis of competence. So we're most happy when we're stretching. Now, if we overstretch and we stretch too much and it's overwhelming and we get stressed out, then we get into that panic zone. And anxiety is running because it's too much and it's challenging, but it's too much and we don't have the skills to handle it. The other axis is the challenge or the competency or the skills. And this is something else that creates happiness when we're using our skills, when we're expressing ourselves and and utilizing our competencies. There's just something about it. And we can see it in small children. There's just something about it. Look, Mom, no hands. Look what I can do. There's just something that brings out the best in us and puts us in a place where we're focused and we're actualizing more potential when we are using our skills. One of the ways to be miserable is to not use your skills. Maybe to sell yourself short for some job that gives you money, but you're not expressing, you're not extending yourself. You're just sitting on skills and competencies. So this was a study of Csikszentmihalyi in his books on flow, as he looked at that, and he called it the flow zone when we're at our best, optimizing challenge and competencies. And that when we're in that zone, and it can be, in his studies, he really identified, it can be the smallest little thing, a conversation, a walk, playing a game, having a conversation. The smallest little thing can bring this out, and we feel like we're all there. Always like that phrase, we're all there. Because the problem with most of us, we're not all there. Because where are you? And so being present to the engagement is what allows us to fully express ourselves, and that just brings out a happiness, a pleasantness, a joy to be fully expressing ourselves at this time. And then as we develop more challenge, more stretch, more meaning, we can express a little bit more and express a little, and we just keep moving further and further into that zone. Now, the ability to step in and out of that zone is one of the abilities we want to have. And in APG, Accessing Personal Genius, we run a pattern. We're going to run a little different pattern today from that one, but it's moving in that same direction of how to really take charge so that you can just turn on that zone. How many can turn on that, at least one or two of your zones of excellence? You can just, any moment, just pop right into it. Okay. What we want to do is to identify certain more places where we can just step into that zone and just be at our best. We do this with the meta coaches. You know, what's your best optimal coaching state? Step in there, or a trainer, and we can now just spread this around everywhere. So we step in and out of that zone, and when we go there, we're essentially losing our mind. That's the part I like. Losing our mind. And coming to our senses, which is what Fritz Perls described as his description of self-actualization, to lose our mind and come to our senses. So that's what we're going to do. On page 66, description of the zone, from the transformations of the construct and the crucible emerges this zone. And it emerges. In some ways, there's an unpredictability to it because you have to have the two other things functioning, meaning and skill and the ability to just hold that space for yourself so that you let the world go away and you let time go away and you let sense of self go away and you just enter into that engagement. So most of us have to set some frames where I give myself permission to let it go away. That'll be part of how we'll construct this state as we give ourselves permission to let it go away. Because if you don't give yourself permission, it'll just be there and in the back of your mind, and you won't be all there. So it emerges once you meet the conditions of this flow zone. And then we experience actualizing more and more of our potentials. Having spent time in the construct inventing meanings, frames, and reframes, and having entered into the crucible for the transformation of our energies so that we can be and become who we are and what we are, we're now ready to move into the zone. And this is the place where we're all there, at our best, and with all of our resources fully available. Here we experience and express our full self and our full gifts. When we're in the zone, we're actualizing our best, and so it's a peak experience. So that paragraph defines what we're talking about and gives some descriptions with regard to that. So we'll be optimizing our skills and our challenges. And The last paragraph, the zone is a special place in human consciousness in that in it we are so present in sensory awareness to the here and now that all the higher abstract and conceptual awarenesses of our mind goes away. So this is that engagement. And most of us experience it quite often in life, but many people do not notice it and punctuate it so that it stands out. But we all experience it from time to time. Maybe when we go to the movies. Somehow in the frame of your mind, you know this is the time, let it all go. Because you turn off your cell phone, hopefully. and you have your comfort food to snack on, and the lights go down and the curtains open. And that structure helps us to let it all go. And we get so involved. And you may get so involved in the movie, whatever the movie is, that when the lights come back on and the curtains close, you may be disoriented as to, is it winter or summer? Is it cold outside or hot outside? What country am I in? That's what I'm always asking, what country am I in? Because I don't know how to behave until I know that one. New Zealand. But there's that disorientation because we've been somewhere else in our mind, in that space, and we've just been lost in that engagement. Well, if we can do that with a movie, if we set some frames and maybe even some environmental things, we can do that with anything. You can get lost in your conversation with a client, with a child, and be fully present. You know you're not present with that child when that child is always taking your face and going, has that ever happened? And your wife.
The minute the judgmentalness comes in, it doesn't matter whether you're saying, I'm being klutzy, or, wow, I'm doing it just right. The good judgment is still judgment, it still cuts it
Exactly.
off. Or if you say, what a good movie, it still reminds you it's only a movie.
Yeah. So being here, now, present, part of the mind that we lose is all that evaluation judgment because we're just experiencing. We're just experiencing. And so permission to just experience without evaluating is going to be really, really key to that. Most of us know that those moments when we're just engaged, like in sports, if we're playing basketball, if we're soccer, whatever we're doing, if suddenly we become aware of what we're doing and evaluate it, the excellence can just be out because it's operated best by just experiencing. There were several other hands that were popping up a moment ago. Gary?
What comes to mind is that this is really the flip side of a natural state. You know, when there's a cognitive processing dimension and an affective regulation, a physiological arousal, hydraulic relationship. As cognitive processing's up, these things are down, and vice versa. And it's survival. If you stop to think about, the saber-tooth tiger, you're dinner for it. And so there's this instantaneous. And what this is the flip side of that. It's allowing ourselves to automatically shift into, a state, okay? But the state is not a survival state, but the state is a flow state, or, and let that cognitive processing just go down and let our natural processes, take over. It's almost like it's an application of a natural state just in a positive direction, which is not ordinarily thought of.
Right. So what you've just described reminds me of another characteristic of the zone, and that is that it's a beingness rather than an instrumental trying to do something. Even though inside there you may be doing something, the orientation that you'll have is just being. So, like athletes, they're trying to do something. There's an intentional thing and instrumental thing of what they're trying to do. But if that's in their mind, then they'll be much less effective. My first genius state that I consciously made was the writing state, because I had writer's block constantly. So I would sit down, and as I would write, I would be judging it and evaluating it and interfering with it. So whatever I was trying to express I was trying to do two things. I was trying to express and judge it at the same time. Once I ran that, and that was 1994 with the metastates model, I found that I just step in there and just go. And when I step out, I'm out of it. And so I haven't had writer's block since 1994. So whenever I step in, I'm just there. And sometimes it amazes me because I can be writing away, the phone will ring, and I'll step out, answer the phone. I might answer the phone for 3 hours or get involved with some other things, and 2 days later, I'll step back in, and I could be mid-sentence. But when I step back in, I'm just there fully again. And because it's all anchored in that space of that zone, so that's the power of just expressing, just being, just enjoying the experience itself because it's meaningful to you, and you've developed more and more competence to be able to do it and perform it. Now the dance is that as long as we're really conscious of it, we're going to be more down here, conscious of our incompetence, conscious that we're still developing it, and maybe even finding more and more meanings, because now it feels like we're just faking it or being real. As it develops, we move in here, but we learn a new one, and we'll dance in and out of that state, and it's the way we get there. So with any discipline, when you first start it, you're not good at it, and you may be real conscious. And if you just let it be, let the skills develop a little bit more, and release as much judgment as possible, then we'll move more and more into that experience, and we're just being. And while it may have an instrumental goal long term, our immediate experience is I'm just expressing what I have to express right now with my skill level. And believing, kind of believing in the back of the mind, this is going to develop, and eventually I'll get pretty skilled and masterful at this, and it's okay to not be there now. Because if we have that demandingness, I've got to be, why can't it be faster? We'll just interfere with it.
Just some clarification from me is I've been thinking about the zone. I think about it in the music realm, play guitar and music and all that. You mentioned sports metaphor or writing, and then it came up about evaluation. And I noticed, I can be jamming with other musicians and be in that lost state, but at some point, we want to refine the songs, and so I have a sense that I need to, evaluate it, right, or so you're saying that little cycle, because even as I'm in that process, I do feel like I'm in another world because I'm working on it, and we're back and forth and all that. But I'm just thinking that just the process of evaluating doesn't take me out of this.
Yeah. So eventually, we can get good at even making our evaluations, because the evaluations is about the thing and has nothing to do with. So we can take evaluation to a whole new level, that I can evaluate. And it's just about my skill, my whatever I'm doing. So
losing the self-consciousness of it.
Yeah. That it's okay to be not good. It's okay to be incompetent, because I'm just working on it and developing it, and it's about the skill and not about me. So person and behavior separation is just, it really moves us into that and can accelerate that. And so this is the dance we all will play with. When we do meta-coaching, we benchmark everybody, those who've been through meta-coaching, we benchmark everybody every single night for a whole hour. They do an hour coaching, and we've got 7 benchmarks. Are you listening well? And we got benchmarks on that, and questioning and supporting and inducing states. And at first, most of the time when someone is coaching, and they're coaching and they know somebody's there just... and they know they're going to get 15 minutes of feedback at the end of that session. The challenge is, how can I have my consciousness and be present to the person I'm working with, knowing in the back of my mind someone is grading, measuring, evaluating. But if you know, the evaluation is just about this particular skill. And it's like being inside the mirror and just making the adjustments, because it's information. It's not put down. It's not insult. It's not rejection. It's not criticism. But that is a trick to train our consciousness to be evaluated, or even the next level, to evaluate ourselves, but just the skill of self. And that'll help you get into that zone so much better. And then, as the great example that you gave, that you're wanting to make it better, but whatever you're doing, it's not about you. So that'll be key as we move into that state. And this is that synthesis between being and doing. Because when we do, we want the performance to have higher quality, higher performance, show more skill, more expertise, move to math. We want to get better and better. And we want to have some way of measuring. Is it getting better or not? Or am I deluding myself? So we want that, but also we want to just be with it. And so as we synthesize those two things, holding the being, that allows us to do more. Most of us have that turned around, especially in American culture. We do in order to be. If I do enough, if I achieve enough, have enough money, have enough this, have enough that, then I'll be okay, or be myself. And we're switching this all around. It's a whole paradigm shift. And in fact, we start from beingness. And as we develop that beingness, which tends to be on this scale, then the performance actually increases because we're kinder, gentler with ourselves. And that'll be really key to building these genius states and stepping in and out, that we're easy and gentle and loving, holding space, as it were, with ourselves. So that's what we're going to do with that. In a little bit, we'll pass out a new accessing your optimal zone state. And we're going to run that pattern, the second pattern today. Before we get there, let me just mention a few things that's in your notes as we walk through this facet of self-actualization. I've put the mind to muscle pattern in your manuals for those of you not familiar with mind to muscle. Well, let me give you an overview real quickly of mind to muscle. Because what we're trying to do is to take the meanings and get them into our muscles, most of us who are great meaning makers, we think in concepts and patterns and principles. And if you read, for instance, the wealth creation literature, Millionaire Next Door, Millionaire Mind, Cash Flow Quadrant, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Courage to Be Wealthy, Susie Ortman. If you read that kind of literature, you'll read it, and it's just these basic principles. They may even translate it into a belief. Here's a belief that people who are wealth creators and self-made millionaires, here's what they believe. But very seldom do you find really strategies for what to do about it. So it's great ideas. One of the simplest ideas for creating wealth is spend less than you make. Duh. Principles are like that. They're like truisms. They're like maxims. They're so, I know that. But how do you get yourself to do it? So that when you're in the store and all this stuff, oh, I like that. And you do the impulsive buying or you overcharge. And so we spend more than we make. But the principle is you could build some capital up that you could do something with if you spent less than you make. Charles Faulkner heard me say that, and he says, well, why don't we make more than I spend? Make more than I spend. So either way, as a principle, the mind-to-muscle one is let's bring it down into our neurology. And the mind-to-muscle pattern does that linguistically by engaging more neurology. So think about when you say, intellectually, I know. You probably don't have much of your neurology involved. I know, intellectually. And if you'll exaggerate that and find your gesture, you'll probably do something like, I don't have much muscle tension, don't have much emphasis in my voice, and I do a gesture like, I know. But how different is that, and how much different neurology is involved when I say, I believe in spending less than I make. I believe in spending less than I'm, if you say it as if it was a strong belief, you're going to use more neurology. I believe in spending less than I make. I believe in making more than I spend. So there. But you can believe things and not do anything about it. So if we now turn it into a decision, from this day forward, I'm going to spend less than I make. Because now you're at a point of decision. And so some people will do this. I'm going to spend less than I make. Because now you're separating, saying yes to one thing and saying no to everything that's in the way. And what that decision means to you, where your brain starts going, I'm going to spend less than I make, you're really cutting a path as you say no to some things and say yes to some things. I've worked with a number of people who, when we get to that, I'll say, just raise your right hand and repeat after me. I'm going to and they'll start stuttering. It's a great way to induce stuttering. I'm going to spend less than I make. Because a person now is using some neurology as they're creating a pathway of what they're going to do. So I will, or I choose, or I'm going to, or from this day forward. So decision. Well, as you say, I believe and I'm deciding, emotions are going to come. And usually unpleasant, uncomfortable emotions first. There may be some excitement, some hope, and some anticipation, but also some anxiety, some apprehension, some worry, some how am I going to do this, some doubt. But whatever is going on, if you just welcome it, because you're moving, and you're moving out from wherever you were. So I'm feeling some anxiety, I'm feeling some anticipation, feeling kind of excited, feeling that I don't know if I can make this happen, and wondering what she's going to think or he's going to think when I say we're going to spend less than we make. And so the feeling, so the next one is I feel, and so you see the next step there is let's translate it into feeling. I am feeling, I'm experiencing. Because as we start just welcoming in and embracing the emotion, it's getting into the body now. Well, let's now translate it out. The one thing I'm going to do today to make this real in my life is write it on a 3x5 card. Call up so-and-so and say, would you hold me responsible to that? Start to create a budget. The one thing I'll do today, that's my first action step. The one thing I'm going to do today, the one thing I'll do tomorrow. And these become the goals from the principle. And now I'm doing something about what was just a concept. So you can take any concept, any principle, any abstract understanding about life and start to really get it into your neurology. Those 5 steps are just the bare bones, the skeleton. Because then you can loop back and start putting in all kinds of things. The principle is now going to affect my self-definition, my identity. I'm a person who saves money. I'm a serious saver. That's who I am. Because I'm looking for opportunities to invest, and I'm building my capital in order to do that. And that's my intention. So now you can bring all the meta questions and the meta levels to make it richer. But it drives it into neurology. My recommendation with this pattern is always to exaggerate gestures. Intellectually, I believe, I'm deciding, I'm feeling, the one thing I'm doing is. Because if you get it into your muscle memory, you'll just have a sense of how to do that. I'd recommend take the NLP principles, the NLP presuppositions. The map, not the territory. I understand that my mapping is not the territory. I believe that my maps is not the territory. From this day forward, I'm going to operate as if my maps and your maps are not the territory, so I'll explore. And I'm feeling really curious. Wonder what your map is, wonder what my map is. And I'm feeling excited because now I can just explore. It's just maps. And the one thing I'll do today is to say this 10 times. And then you will have a felt feeling of map, not territory. I can't even say that phrase without doing this and that. Because it's in muscle memory. Behind every behavior There's some positive intent. I feel that in my behind every behavior, whatever's in my face behavior, behind it is some positive intent. So if you start integrating it, it won't just be, what was that great principle? But it'll be a felt reality. So mind to muscle it is one way to begin to get it into your neurology. So I've put that in some of your manuals, just so that you have that. Okay, we'll get some more there. So let me stop and just ask if there's questions about that, because felt reality.